In a distant corner of the galaxy, far beyond the reach of human eyes, there lived a group of beings known as the Varn. They were an ancient species, wise and skilled in ways that most others could only dream of. Long ago, their civilization had been the envy of the universe. Their cities sparkled like jewels against the night sky. Their technology was unmatched, and their art told stories that moved even the coldest hearts. But time is cruel, and for the Varn, it brought nothing but ruin. Centuries passed, and the Varn grew arrogant. They believed themselves superior to every other species, dismissing those who sought their help or tried to learn from them. Wars erupted among their own kind, tearing apart their once great empire. When peace finally returned, the damage was done. The Varn were no longer respected. They were forgotten. Other species stopped trading with them, stopped speaking to them, and eventually stopped caring about them altogether. It was as if the universe had turned its back on the Varn, leaving them stranded on barren moons and desolate planets. Their situation became even worse when a mysterious cosmic event struck. A strange wave of energy swept through the galaxy, draining power from the stars and planets around them. For the Varn, this meant disaster. Their already fragile infrastructure collapsed completely. Machines that had kept their homes livable fell silent. Crops withered under dimming suns and food supplies dwindled. Desperation set in as the Varn realized they were staring into the abyss of extinction. They tried reaching out to other species for help, sending messages across the stars in hopes someone would hear them. But the response, or lack thereof, was devastating. Some ignored their pleas entirely. Others mocked them, saying the Varn deserved their fate after centuries of arrogance. A few even attacked, taking what little resources the Varn had left. Alone and abandoned, the Varn began to lose hope. Many gave up, resigning themselves to a slow death in the cold emptiness of space. But whispers started to spread among the stars. A new species had appeared. These creatures called themselves humans. Unlike the Varn, humans were young and inexperienced by galactic standards. They had only recently begun exploring the vastness of space, yet they carried something unique, an insatiable curiosity. Wherever humans went, they asked questions, built connections, and sought understanding. Word of their arrival reached the Varn, sparking faint glimmers of hope. Could these newcomers be different? Could they offer salvation where others had refused? The first encounter between the Varn and humans happened almost by chance. A small human ship, part of a fleet venturing into uncharted territory, malfunctioned during its journey. Drifting aimlessly, it stumbled upon a derelict Varn outpost orbiting a dying star. The outpost was barely functional, its systems flickering like candlelight in a storm. Inside, a handful of Varn clung to life, too weak to do much more than wait for the inevitable end. When the humans arrived, both sides were wary. The Varn saw strangers entering their sanctuary, unsure whether they came as friends or foes. The humans, unfamiliar with alien life, approached cautiously, scanning for threats. Communication was difficult at first. Neither side spoke the others. Language and gestures often led to misunderstandings. But necessity forced them to work together. The human ship needed repairs, while the Varn's failing power core required immediate attention. Slowly, they found ways to cooperate, using simple tools and shared determination to solve problems. As days turned into weeks, trust began to form. The humans marveled at the sophistication of Varn technology, which seemed light years ahead of anything they had seen before. Meanwhile, the Varn admired the ingenuity of the humans who managed to improvise solutions with limited resources. More importantly, they noticed something else about the humans: kindness. Despite being strangers, the humans treated the Varn with respect, offering food, medical aid, and companionship. This was a stark contrast to how the rest of the galaxy had treated them. One evening, as the humans worked alongside the Varn to stabilize the outpost's power supply, a young human engineer named Kale made a discovery. Buried beneath layers of dust and debris, he uncovered a piece of Varn artwork, an intricate carving depicting a scene of unity and harmony. Moved by its beauty, Kale showed it to the Varn leader, an elderly female named Silas. Her eyes filled with tears as she explained its significance. "This symbolizes what we once stood for," she said softly, her voice trembling. "We forgot our own values long ago." That moment marked a turning point. For the first time in generations, the Varn felt seen, not as relics of a forgotten era, but as living beings capable of growth and change. In turn, the humans realized that beneath the Varn's worn exteriors lay a people rich in history and potential. By the time the humans prepared to leave, they had not only repaired their ship, but also reignited a spark within the Varn. Before departing, Kale handed Salus a small device containing records of human culture, music, stories, and images of Earth. "Take this," he said with a smile. "It's a gift. Maybe one day we'll meet again." Salus accepted the device, clutching it tightly as the human ship vanished into the stars. Though the encounter was brief, its impact lingered. Among the Varn, discussions erupted about what had transpired. Some dismissed it as irrelevant, arguing that humanity was too primitive to make a difference. But others, inspired by the humans' kindness and curiosity, began to imagine a future where cooperation might save them. Seeds of hope had been planted, and though they were small, they held the promise of something greater. Unbeknownst to either side, this meeting was just the beginning of a story that would reshape the galaxy. For now, however, the Varn watched the skies, wondering if the humans would return. And somewhere aboard a distant human vessel, Kale gazed at the stars, dreaming of the day he might see the Varn again. Little did they know, their fates were intertwined in ways neither could yet comprehend. The encounter with the humans left a profound mark on the Varn. For days after the human ship departed, the outpost buzzed with activity and debate. The Varn who had interacted with the humans recounted every detail of their time together, from the initial mistrust to the eventual moments of camaraderie. Salus, the elder leader, held council meetings in the dimly lit chamber of the outpost, where the surviving Varn gathered to discuss what they had learned and what it meant for their future. Some Varn remained skeptical. "They are primitive," one elder named Korth argued, his voice sharp and dismissive. "Their technology is crude compared to ours, and their understanding of the cosmos is laughable. How can they help us when they barely know how to survive themselves?" Others echoed his sentiments, pointing out that relying on such a young species would be foolish. After all, the Varn had spent centuries trying to regain their former glory, only to be rejected by every advanced civilization they approached. Why should humanity be any different? But not everyone shared this pessimism. A younger Varn named Lyra, who had worked closely with Kale during the repairs, spoke up passionately. "You didn't see them the way I did," she said, her eyes glowing, faintly with determination. "Yes, their tools are simple, but their minds are anything but. They solve problems differently, creatively. They don't give up even when things seem impossible." She paused, holding up the small device Kale had given them. "And look at this. This isn't just a gift. It's a message. They want to learn about us, to understand us. No one has cared enough to do that in generations." Her words struck a chord with many, especially the younger Varn, who had grown tired of clinging to the past. While the elders clung to memories of their once mighty empire, the younger generation saw an opportunity for renewal. If the humans were willing to reach out, perhaps the Varn could find a way to rebuild, not as conquerors or rulers, but as partners. Slowly, the tide began to shift. The idea of seeking out humanity gained traction, though it was met with resistance from those who feared losing what little dignity they had left. After weeks of heated discussions, Salus made a bold decision. "We will send emissaries," she declared, her voice steady despite the weight of her choice. "Not warriors or diplomats, but explorers, those among us who believe in the possibility of change. We will find the humans and see if they are truly as different as they seem." Her announcement was met with mixed reactions. Some cheered, seeing it as a chance for redemption. Others grumbled, convinced it would end in failure. But Salus stood firm. "If we do nothing, we die here alone. If we try, we may yet live." Selecting the team was no easy task. Lyra volunteered immediately, her enthusiasm infectious. Joining her were two others. Torin, a skilled engineer whose practical mindset balanced Lyra's idealism, and Vela, a historian eager to document whatever lay ahead. Together they prepared a makeshift vessel using parts salvaged from the outpost and remnants of older ships. It was far from perfect, patched together with wires and prayers, but it was functional, or so they hoped. As the day of departure approached, emotions ran high. Many questioned whether the mission was worth the risk. The journey would take them across treacherous regions of space, through asteroid fields and radiation zones that could destroy their fragile ship in moments. Even if they survived, there was no guarantee the humans would welcome them again. Yet, for Lyra and her companions, the uncertainty was worth it. They carried with them not just supplies, but hope, a fragile, flickering flame that refused to go out. Finally, the moment came. With Salus watching from the shadows of the outpost, the trio boarded their vessel. The engines roared to life, sputtering at first but eventually stabilizing. As the ship lifted off, Lyra glanced back at the outpost one last time. It was a place of suffering and survival, but also of new beginnings. She whispered a silent promise to herself. We won't return empty-handed. The journey was anything but smooth. Within hours, alarms blared as the ship encountered its first obstacle, a dense field of debris left behind by some long-forgotten catastrophe. Torin worked tirelessly at the controls, dodging chunks of metal and rock while Vela monitored the ship's systems for signs of strain. Lyra sat quietly, clutching the human device Kale had given them. It felt like a talisman, a reminder of why they were doing this. When the ship finally emerged from the debris field, battered but intact, the three shared a weary smile. They had passed their first test. Days turned into weeks as they ventured deeper into uncharted territory. Supplies dwindled, tempers flared, and doubts crept in. At one point, the ship's navigation system malfunctioned, leaving them adrift in a sea of stars. Panic threatened to overwhelm them until Vela discovered an ancient star map etched into the walls of the outpost before they left. Using it, they recalibrated their course, narrowly avoiding disaster. Each challenge brought them closer together, forging bonds stronger than steel. Then at last they found it. A human settlement nestled on a distant planet. From orbit, it looked modest compared to the grand cities of the Varn's past. But it radiated warmth and vitality. Lights twinkled like fireflies and structures rose gracefully from the landscape, blending with nature rather than dominating it. For the first time in years, the Varn felt something they had almost forgotten: awe. Descending onto the planet's surface, they braced themselves for the unknown. Would the humans remember them? Would they accept them? As their ship touched, down in a clearing outside the settlement, a group of humans emerged, their expressions wary but curious. Among them was Kale, now wearing the uniform of a senior engineer. His face lit up with recognition as he spotted Lyra stepping out of the ship. "You came back," he said, his voice filled with disbelief and joy. Lyra nodded, her heart pounding. "We had to," she replied simply. "You gave us hope. Now we're here to see if that hope can grow." For a moment, silence hung between the two groups. Then slowly, cautiously, hands were extended in greeting. It was a small gesture, but it carried immense significance. The Varn had been forsaken by every species in the galaxy, until the humans showed up. And now, standing face to face under a foreign sky, both sides knew this was only the beginning of something extraordinary. The arrival of the Varn emissaries at the human settlement marked a turning point, not just for the two species but for the entire galaxy. At first, the humans were cautious, unsure of what to make of these strange visitors who had traveled so far to find them. The Varn, too, felt a mix of emotions, hope mingled with anxiety as they stepped into unfamiliar territory. But despite their differences, both groups shared a common goal: survival, and that shared purpose became the foundation upon which their fragile alliance was built. Kale took charge of welcoming the Varn, guiding Lyra, Torin, and Vela through the settlement. As they walked, Lyra marveled at how the humans had adapted to their environment. Unlike the cold, mechanical cities of the Varn's past, this place pulsed with life. Gardens bloomed alongside solar panels, wind turbines spun lazily in the breeze, and children played in open courtyards. It was clear that the humans valued harmony between technology and nature, a concept foreign to the Varn, yet undeniably appealing. "This is beautiful," Lyra said softly, her voice tinged with admiration. "You've created something balanced." Cale smiled, though his expression carried a hint of sadness. "It wasn't always like this," he admitted. "Our early colonies were chaotic, wasteful. We nearly destroyed ourselves before we learned to live with the land instead of against it. Maybe that's why we're drawn to exploration, not just to discover new worlds, but to learn how to survive on them." His words struck a chord with Lyra. She thought about the Varn's own history, how their arrogance and greed had led to their downfall. Perhaps there was wisdom in humility, in learning from mistakes rather than repeating them. For the first time, she began to see the humans not as primitive newcomers but as equals, beings with lessons to teach as much as they had to learn. As days passed, the humans and Varn worked side by side, sharing knowledge and resources. Torin collaborated with human engineers to repair damaged equipment, while Vela pored over human records, fascinated by their culture and history. In return, the Varn introduced the humans to technologies long forgotten by most of the galaxy. Medical devices capable of healing wounds faster than any human invention, energy-efficient power cores, and even methods of sustainable agriculture. All of these gifts transformed the settlement overnight. But collaboration wasn't without its challenges. Misunderstandings arose frequently, often stemming from differences in communication styles. The Varn tended to speak indirectly, relying on subtle cues and implied meanings, while the humans favored straightforwardness. This sometimes led to confusion, especially during debates over resource allocation or project priorities. One such disagreement occurred when Torin proposed using a rare mineral found on the planet to upgrade the settlement's defenses. The humans argued that the mineral should be reserved for building schools and housing. Voices rose, tempers flared, and for a moment, it seemed the alliance might crumble under the strain. But then Cale intervened, reminding everyone of their shared mission. "We're here because we need each other," he said firmly, his gaze shifting between the Varn and his fellow humans. "If we start fighting over scraps, we'll lose sight of what matters. Let's focus on solutions, not arguments." His words calmed the tension, and together, they devised a compromise. Half the mineral would go toward defense, ensuring the safety of the settlement, while the rest would be used for community projects. It was an imperfect solution, but it worked. And more importantly, it strengthened the bond between the two groups. They realized that disagreements didn't have to mean failure. They could be opportunities for growth. Amidst the practical work, moments of connection blossomed. Lyra spent hours teaching human children about Varn art, showing them how to create intricate patterns using light and shadow. In return, the children taught her simple games that filled her with laughter she hadn't known in years. Vela formed a close friendship with an elderly human historian named Mara, who shared stories of Earth's ancient civilizations. Together, they dreamed of compiling a joint history of their peoples, preserving the struggles and triumphs of both species. For future generations, even Torin, who had initially been skeptical of the humans, found himself warming to them. He admired their resilience, their ability to adapt and innovate with limited resources. One evening, as he tinkered with a malfunctioning generator, a young human apprentice named Rhea approached him hesitantly. "Can I help?" she asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. Torin hesitated, unused to working with outsiders, but something in her eagerness reminded him of his younger self, eager to prove his worth. "All right," he said gruffly, handing her a tool. "Hold this steady while I adjust the wiring." As they worked together, Rhea peppered him with questions, asking about Varn engineering techniques and marveling at their precision. By the time the generator roared back to life, Torin found himself smiling. a rare occurrence for someone as stoic as him. "Not bad," he muttered, giving Rhea a nod of approval. "You'll make a decent engineer someday." These small interactions added up, weaving threads of trust and understanding between the two species. Yet not everyone approved of the partnership. Back on Earth, news of the Varn's presence sparked heated debates. Some hailed the alliance as a groundbreaking achievement, proof that humanity could bridge divides even in the vastness of space. Others, however, viewed the Varn with suspicion, questioning their motives and warning of potential threats. Among the skeptics was Commander Elena Vasquez, head of Earth's interstellar security forces. A hardened veteran of countless conflicts, she saw the Varn as a liability rather than an asset. "They're desperate," she told a council of human leaders during a tense meeting. "Desperation makes people unpredictable. What happens when they decide we're no longer useful? Will they turn on us?" Her concerns weren't entirely unfounded. There were whispers among certain factions of the Varn elite, those who still clung to dreams of restoring their empire, that the alliance with humans was a temporary measure, a means to an end. These dissenters argued that relying on a lesser species undermined the Varn's dignity and suggested covert plans to exploit the humans once their usefulness ran out. Lyra heard rumors of these plots and confronted Salus via a secure communication channel. "We can't let this happen," she pleaded. "The humans trusted us when no one else did. If we betray them now, we'll prove every doubter right." Salus sighed, her age showing in the weariness of her expression. "I know, child. But change doesn't come easily, especially to those who've lost everything. We must tread carefully, balancing progress with tradition." Determined to prevent division, Lyra rallied her allies within the Varn community. Together they organized cultural exchanges, inviting humans to share meals, music, and stories with the Varn. These events fostered empathy and dispelled fears, helping both sides see each other as individuals rather than stereotypes. Slowly but surely, the voices of distrust grew quieter, drowned out by the chorus of cooperation. Back on the planet, the settlement flourished. New buildings rose, powered by hybrid energy systems designed jointly by Varn and human engineers. Fields of crops stretched across the landscape, irrigated by advanced water recycling methods developed through shared research. Even the stars above seemed brighter, as if approving of the union below. Yet challenges loomed on the horizon. News reached the settlement of hostile species lurking nearby, envious of the newfound prosperity. Pirates and raiders began targeting supply ships traveling to and from the colony, threatening to cut off vital resources. Worse still, intelligence reports hinted at a larger threat, an alien faction intent on destroying the alliance before it could grow stronger. When Kale informed the group of these dangers, fear rippled through the settlement. But Lyra stood, tall, her resolve unshaken. "We've faced worse," she said, addressing both humans and Varn. "Together, we've overcome starvation, isolation, and despair. If we stand united, no enemy can break us." Her words ignited a fire within the community. Humans and Varn trained side by side, preparing for whatever lay ahead. Weapons were forged, defenses fortified, and strategies devised. Though the road ahead promised hardship, neither side doubted the strength of their bond. They had started as strangers, brought together by chance. Now they were allies, bound not by treaties or agreements, but by trust, respect, and a shared vision of a better future. And so, as the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, casting golden light across the settlement, the humans and Varn stood ready. Whatever storms awaited them, they would face them together. For the first time in centuries, the Varn no longer felt forsaken, and for the humans, the universe no longer seemed so vast or lonely. Together, they had begun to build something extraordinary, a legacy that would endure long after the stars burned out. The fragile alliance between the Varn and humans faced its greatest test yet, as hostile forces closed in on their settlement. News of the growing prosperity at the edge of known space had spread quickly, drawing the attention of those who saw cooperation between species not as a strength but as a threat. Among these were the Krill, a militaristic race notorious for their disdain of alliances and their belief in dominance through force. To them, the union of humans and Varn represented an affront to the natural order, one that needed to be destroyed. Commander, Elena Vasquez's warnings about potential dangers now seemed prophetic. Though her distrust of the Varn remained strong, she couldn't ignore the mounting evidence of impending attacks. Reluctantly, Earth's military dispatched reinforcements to the settlement, led by Elena herself. Her arrival created tension. Many Varn viewed her presence as an act of mistrust, while some humans questioned whether her aggressive tactics might escalate the conflict unnecessarily. Yet despite her reservations, Elena recognized that survival depended on unity. She swallowed her pride and extended an olive branch to Lyra and the other Varn leaders. "We may not agree on everything," Elena said during their first meeting, her tone gruff but sincere. "But if we're going to survive this, we need to fight as one." Lyra nodded, though her eyes betrayed her unease. "We understand. But remember, Commander, trust is earned, not given freely." Elena didn't argue. Instead, she focused on preparing defenses, working closely with Tauren and human engineers to fortify the settlement. Walls were reinforced with materials scavenged from abandoned structures, while hidden trenches and traps were dug around the perimeter. Weapon systems designed by the Varn were integrated into human artillery, creating hybrid armaments that combined precision with raw power. Every day brought new challenges, but also glimpses of hope as both species worked tirelessly toward a common goal. Meanwhile, Kale and Lyra took charge of organizing non-combatants, children, elders, and those unfit for battle. They established evacuation routes and underground shelters, ensuring everyone knew what to do if the worst happened. During drills, Cal noticed how Lyra's calm demeanor reassured even the most frightened settlers. He admired her leadership, realizing that her quiet strength was as vital to their survival as any weapon or shield. As preparations continued, scouts reported troubling signs: Krill ships prowling the outer edges of the system, probing for weaknesses. Their movements suggested they were gathering intelligence before launching a full-scale assault. Time was running out. One evening, under the pale glow of twin moons, Kale approached Lyra as she stood atop a hill overlooking the settlement. "Do you think we're ready?" he asked, his voice heavy with doubt. Lyra turned to him, her expression resolute. "No one is ever truly ready for war, but we've done all we can. If they come tomorrow, we'll face them together." Kale nodded, though fear lingered in his chest. He thought of the friends he'd made among the Varn, the laughter shared, the lessons learned, and vowed silently that he wouldn't let them down. The attack came without warning. In the dead of night, alarms blared as Krill vessels descended like vultures, unleashing waves of drones and ground troops. Chaos erupted as explosions lit up the sky, shaking the very ground beneath their feet. Humans and Varn sprang into action, manning weapon stations and rushing to defend key positions. The battle raged fiercely, testing every ounce of preparation and resolve. Elena proved to be a formidable leader, directing human squads with ruthless efficiency. Her strategies were brutal but effective, forcing the Krill to divert resources away from critical areas. Meanwhile, Lyra demonstrated tactical brilliance, using Varn technology to jam enemy communications and disable their drones mid-flight. Together they formed a dynamic duo, complementing each other's strengths and covering for weaknesses. Amidst the chaos, acts of heroism emerged. Tauren risked his life to repair a damaged energy core powering the settlement's shields, narrowly, avoiding death as debris rained down around him. Rhea, the young apprentice who had once shadowed Tauren, bravely manned a turret alongside seasoned soldiers, her hands steady despite the terror gripping her heart. Even Vela joined the fray, using her knowledge of ancient Varn combat techniques to train civilians in close-quarters defense. But the Krill were relentless. Outnumbered and outgunned, the defenders began to falter. A breach in the northern wall allowed enemy forces to pour into the settlement, threatening to overwhelm them entirely. It was then that Lyra made a daring decision. "We need to draw them away," she told Kale urgently. If we lure them deeper into the settlement, we can funnel them into the trap zones. Kale hesitated. That's suicide. You'll be walking straight into their line of fire. Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch firm yet gentle. It's our only chance, trust me. With little time to argue, Kyle relented. Lyra rallied a small group of volunteers, both humans and Varn, and charged headlong into the fray. Their diversion succeeded, pulling the Krill forces toward the prearranged ambush points. As the enemy advanced, hidden explosives detonated, sending shockwaves rippling through their ranks. Traps sprang to life, ensnaring invaders and giving the defenders precious moments to regroup. Back at the command center, Elena coordinated counterattacks, pushing the Krill back step by bloody step. Her voice crackled over comms, rallying weary fighters with promises of victory. Hold the line, she shouted. For humanity, for the Varn, for every species that believes in peace. Inspired by her words, the defenders fought with renewed vigor. Slowly but surely the tide began to turn. Reinforcements from Earth arrived just in time, deploying advanced weaponry that tipped the scales decisively in their favor. The Krill, realizing they were outnumbered and outmaneuvered, retreated in disarray, leaving behind smoldering wreckage and shattered hopes. When the dust settled, the survivors gathered amidst the ruins of their home. Exhaustion etched deep lines into their faces, but their spirits remained unbroken. Kale found Lyra near the central plaza, tending to wounded comrades with quiet determination. Blood streaked her armor, but she showed no sign of pain. You did it? Kyle said softly, approaching her. You saved us. Lyra shook her head, her gaze fixed on the horizon. We did it. Together. Her words carried weight, echoing across the settlement as humans and Varn embraced, sharing tears of relief and gratitude. For the first time, there was no distinction between us and them. They were one people, forged in the crucible of adversity. In the days that followed, stories of the battle spread far beyond the settlement. Other colonies, inspired by the courage displayed, began reaching out to the Varn, offering aid and forging partnerships of their own. The alliance between humans and Varn became a symbol of hope, a beacon shining brightly against the darkness of prejudice and fear. Yet scars remained. Buildings lay in ruins, lives had been lost, and the memory of violence haunted even the strongest hearts. But within that sorrow lay seeds of growth. Artisans from both species collaborated to rebuild the settlement, crafting structures that blended human ingenuity with Varn elegance. Children played games that taught lessons of unity, passing tales of bravery from one generation to the next. Even Commander Elena softened over time, witnessing the sacrifices made by the Varn and the unwavering loyalty shown by humans, forced her to confront her biases. She began advocating for greater integration between the two species, recognizing that their combined strength could reshape the galaxy for the better. As the settlement rose anew, so too did dreams of exploration. Teams of scientists, engineers, and explorers prepared to venture further into the stars, seeking answers to questions that had plagued both species for centuries. Ancient ruins hinted at civilizations older than the Varn, offering clues to understanding the mysterious cosmic event that had nearly wiped them out. Each discovery fueled excitement, reminding everyone of how much there was still to learn. Through it all, Kale and Lyra remained steadfast companions, their bond strengthened by trials, endured together. Whether strategizing for future missions or simply watching the sunset side by side, they embodied the spirit of collaboration that now defined their world. And so, as the galaxy looked on, the alliance between humans and Varn grew stronger, proving that even in the face of overwhelming odds, unity could triumph over division. What had begun as a desperate gamble had blossomed into something extraordinary, a testament to the power of trust, courage, and the unyielding belief that together, anything was possible. The alliance between humans and Varn had weathered its greatest storm, but their journey was far from over. The victory against the Krill marked a turning point, not just for the settlement but for the galaxy itself. Word of their triumph spread, like wildfire, reaching distant planets and forgotten outposts. For the first time in centuries, the Varn were no longer seen as relics of a bygone era or pariahs shunned by the cosmos. They were survivors, innovators, and partners in humanity's bold quest for unity among the stars. As the settlement rebuilt, it transformed into something greater than anyone could have imagined. Architects from both species collaborated to design structures that blended human creativity with Varn precision. Buildings shimmered with iridescent panels powered by clean energy, while gardens flourished under translucent domes that mimicked Earth's skies. Streets buzzed with activity as humans and Varn walked side by side, sharing laughter and stories. It wasn't perfect. Tensions occasionally flared, and old prejudices lingered, but progress was undeniable. This place, once a fragile outpost, on the edge of oblivion, had become a beacon of hope. Lyra stood atop one of the newly constructed towers, gazing at the horizon. Beside her was Kale, his hands resting on the railing as he admired the view. "Do you remember when we first arrived here?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with emotion. "We were so unsure of what would happen." Kyle chuckled, shaking his head. "I remember thinking you might vaporize me the moment I stepped off my ship." Lyra smiled, glancing at him. "And yet here we are, still alive, and still arguing about who gets the last piece of dessert." Their banter reflected the deep bond they had formed. Once strangers separated by species, culture, and history, they now shared an unbreakable connection. Their relationship symbolized the larger transformation occurring around them. Two peoples learning to coexist, to trust, and to dream together. But peace never came without challenges. As news of the alliance reached farther corners of the galaxy, reactions varied. Wildly, some species welcomed the idea of cooperation, inspired by the example set by humans and Varn. Others viewed it with suspicion, fearing that such alliances could upset the delicate balance of power in the universe. Hostile factions began forming, determined to dismantle what they saw as a dangerous precedent. One such faction emerged from the shadows, a coalition of rogue civilizations calling themselves the Obsidian Accord. They believed in domination through fear, seeing unity as a weakness to exploit. Rumors suggested they were amassing forces, planning a massive assault to crush the fledgling alliance before it gained more influence. When intelligence reports confirmed these rumors, unease rippled through the settlement. "We can't let them destroy what we've built," Lyra said during an emergency meeting with human and Varn leaders. Her tone was firm, her eyes blazing with determination. "If we stand united, there's nothing they can do to break us." Elena Vasquez, who had grown to respect the Varn despite her initial skepticism, nodded in agreement. "They're counting on us to crumble under pressure. But if we strike first, if we show them we're not afraid, they'll think twice about attacking." The decision was made to launch a preemptive mission, targeting key bases used by the Obsidian Accord to coordinate their operations. It was a risky move, requiring careful planning and flawless execution. Teams of humans and Varn worked around the clock, combining their skills to prepare for the operation. Engineers modified ships with cloaking technology developed by the Varn, while strategists devised intricate battle plans that leveraged the strengths of both species. As the day of departure approached, emotions ran high. Families gathered to bid farewell to loved ones heading into danger. Children clung to parents, promising to be brave until they returned. Among those leaving was Kyle, chosen to lead the human contingent due to his experience and leadership. Standing beside him was Lyra, who refused to stay behind despite protests from Salus and other elders. "You need me out there," she insisted, her voice steady. "This isn't just your fight. It's ours." Salus finally relented, though. Worry etched lines into her aged face. "Come back safely," she whispered, embracing Lyra. "You carry the hopes of our people with you." The fleet departed under cover of darkness, slipping past enemy patrols thanks to the cloaking devices. Stars streaked past the windows as they ventured deeper into hostile territory, each passing moment bringing them closer to their objective. Tension mounted as they neared the target, a heavily fortified station orbiting a barren moon. Sensors showed dozens of enemy vessels docked nearby, their weapons primed and ready. "This is it," Kale said, addressing the crew over the comm system. "Stick to the plan, watch each other's backs, and don't give them a chance to regroup." Lyra added, her voice calm but commanding, "Remember why we're doing this. Not just for ourselves, but for every being who believes in a better future." With those words echoing in their minds, the fleet launched its attack. Ships decloaked simultaneously, unleashing a barrage of firepower that caught the enemy off guard. Explosions lit up the void as human and Varn pilots executed maneuvers honed through countless hours of training. On the ground, boarding parties breached the station, engaging in fierce close-quarters combat. Every step forward was hard-fought, every victory earned through blood, sweat, and sacrifice. Amidst the chaos, acts of bravery shone brightly. A young Varn soldier named Nira sacrificed herself to disable a critical shield generator, allowing the fleet to bombard the station's core. A human medic named Jarek braved enemy fire to drag wounded comrades to safety, refusing to leave anyone behind. Even Elena Vasquez, leading from the front lines, inspired her troops with her unwavering resolve. When the dust settled, the station lay in ruins, its threat neutralized. Though casualties weighed heavily on everyone, the mission succeeded beyond expectations. The Obsidian Accord's grip on the region weakened significantly, forcing them to retreat and regroup. More importantly, the victory sent a clear message. The alliance between humans and Varn was not to be trifled with. Back at the settlement, celebrations erupted as news of the triumph reached home. Crowds cheered as the returning fleet descended, banners waving and music filling the air. Tears flowed freely as families reunited, hugging tightly as if afraid to let go again. In the central plaza, a monument was erected to honor those who had fallen. A towering sculpture depicting intertwined figures representing both species, forever bound in solidarity. As time passed, the alliance continued to grow. New colonies sprang up across the galaxy, each one embodying the principles of cooperation and mutual respect. Humans and Varn explored ancient ruins together, uncovering secrets that reshaped their understanding of the universe. Technologies once thought lost were rediscovered, sparking revolutions in medicine, agriculture, and energy production. Art flourished as well, blending human imagination with Varn elegance to create masterpieces that transcended cultural boundaries. Yet, perhaps the most profound change was within the Varn themselves. No longer burdened by the weight of their past failures, they embraced a new identity, one rooted in humility, resilience, and hope. Humanity taught them the value of adaptability and compassion, qualities that had been missing during their days of arrogance. In turn, the Varn enriched human civilization, sharing wisdom accumulated over millennia and reminding them of the importance of balance and foresight. Years later, as Lyra and Kale stood together watching another sunset, they reflected on how far they had come. What began as a desperate gamble had blossomed into something extraordinary, a testament to the power of forgiveness, trust, and the courage to reach across divides. "Do you ever wonder what comes next?" Kale asked, breaking the silence. Lyra smiled, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Of course, but I think that's the beauty of it. Together we've proven that anything is possible. Whatever lies ahead, we'll face it side by side." And so, as the stars twinkled above, the legacy of humans and Varn endured, a shining example of what could be achieved when different worlds came together as one. Their story became legend, told and retold across the galaxy, inspiring countless others to follow in their footsteps. In a universe often defined by division and strife, they proved that unity was not just a dream, it was a reality worth fighting for.